Today's episode is sponsored by Craftsy. Calling all crafters, are you ready to dive deep into your favorite crafting projects and learn new techniques along the way? Then it's time to join Craftsy Premium Membership. For only $1.49, you'll receive a full year of access to expert-led tutorials, patterns, and projects in every category you can imagine. With a massive library of resources at your fingertips, you'll be able to create your best work yet and bring your crafting dreams to life. Don't wait. Sign up at craftsyoffers.com and discover the endless possibilities of Craftsy Premium Membership. Thank you so much, Craftsy. And now here's the show. Welcome to episode 255 of the Craft Industry Alliance podcast. I'm Abby Glassenberg. Craft Industry Alliance is a community for craft professionals where you can strengthen your creative business, stay up to date on industry news, and build connections within our supportive trade association. Check it out at craftindustrｙalliance.org. Today on the show, we are talking about bargello with my guest, Brett Bara. Brett is the founder of Hello Bargello, a brand dedicated to reviving the vintage craft of bargello for modern makers. Brett is a crafts expert and creative entrepreneur who has been working in the crafts industry for over 20 years. Over the years, she's been a magazine editor-in-chief, a book author, a TV host, a video instructor, a brand spokesperson, a social media maven, a designer, a blogger, and more. Her entrepreneurial spirit has inspired her to start businesses that connect the young urban folks in her community with the deep tradition of handcrafts. In 2013, Brett founded Brooklyn Craft Company, a modern crafting store and workshop space in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. In Brett's current role as owner of Hello Bargello, she strives to connect the dots between preserving traditional crafts and building a thriving contemporary e-commerce business. Brett Bara, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
It is great to have you. You're somebody I have wanted to talk to for years, and I'm very excited to learn more about your story. So let's go way back and talk a little bit about where you grew up and what you were like as a kid.
Well, I grew up in Pennsylvania in a tiny, small town, borderline rural, and my parents were very crafty DIY people. My dad is a carpenter, so he was always building everything, and my mom, is very crafty. I always joke that I was crafting in utero because she was crafting while I was cooking, and we made everything ourselves in our home. That's just the way it was. Like literally, my parents were building and making everything. They were, gardening and canning vegetables before the hipsters started doing it. They did it, the old school way. And I just grew up, sewing is such a big memory. My mom was big into sewing, and it was like going to the fabric store and flipping through the big books and picking out patterns, and she would let me pick out my fabric, and then I would be there for the process of watching her make it. And I was just so proud to wear clothes that she made for me. So that was just kind of what we grew up doing, and I loved all of it. In 8th grade, I made my boyfriend a cross stitch as a gift. It was like that's such a memory for me, and really speaks to like how much I loved my fiber crafts even then, and thought it was basically like the greatest expression of love that you could possibly do.
What did it look like?
Okay, it was 4 galloping horses that were one color only. They were like in silhouette, and it was chocolate brown. And so it was just the silhouette of 4 galloping horses. So, I can't imagine stitching something in only one color now. I would die of boredom, but...
And did he like it?
He loved it.
Oh, you got it framed.
I got it professionally framed, and he loved it. And he was also an artist, and he would like draw me pictures as gifts. And I just think that's such a sweet memory of
that's funny.
Early love and creativity.
Yeah, that's amazing. So in high school, were you thinking, I want to go to art school, or what were you thinking you wanted to do?
So I was told, now this was early 90s, I was told that you could never make a living doing anything creative. And I was a smart kid, so I had to be a doctor or an engineer. It was just anything anyone told me. That was it. I had no concept of art school or design school. Like literally no one knew in my town that you could have careers doing those things. And that's actually something I have a lot of like regret about. I wish I had known to go to design school,
Mm.
but I actually I thought I was going to be a doctor. So I started out as pre-med,
Oh,
lasted not even one semester, totally bombed. And I always was a good student, but I was not a science kid. I was a writing and art kid. So I promptly switched to an English and French major in college. And I moved to New York City right after college graduation and I started working in magazine editing. So
mm.
I quickly pivoted from pre-med and became a magazine editor.
Did you have like an internship at magazines? I mean, how did you get a magazine job right out of college? That seems kind of challenging.
Yeah, I did. I did land a good internship right out of college. I was able to. So my college in Pennsylvania was actually based near a pretty good sized publisher there in Pennsylvania called Rodale Publishing, and they published. They're not. They don't exist anymore, but at that time they published Prevention and Men's Health, were their big
Okay.
titles, and they had a pretty robust book publishing arm. So through my college connections, I got an internship at Men's Health. And that was based in Pennsylvania, but there was a kind of a pipeline from there to New York City. Like so many of the staffers had lived in the city and then moved there, or vice versa. So a lot of my friends were moving to the city after graduation. So I just decided to move to the city with no job, nothing. I moved in with a friend and I had a list of like my last day of my internship. I walked around the office with my legal pad and just literally went to every person's desk and said, I'm moving to New York. Do you have any contacts? And I had a legal page of names and I called them all up. We didn't even really email then. And I just called all these people up and I went on lunches and somebody offered me an internship at Details magazine, which is also no longer around, but was like a really hip, stylish magazine back in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a position there. That was they were both paid internships. So they were paid positions out of college. So I had a position.
Details was like a men's fashion magazine. Okay.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. Yep. Men's fashion. So from there, I made enough contacts that I was just kind of in the magazine publishing industry. So
Mm.
I did that for, like all of my 20s. I was mostly a freelance magazine writer. Um,
Okay.
so I
So
worked.
like finding stories, pitching stories,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and then getting
Yep.
them accepted and then working on the assignment and working with the
It,
editor. Yeah.
yes, all of that. And mostly for men's and women's magazines. So I mostly did like beauty, lifestyle, health, the old Cosmopolitan and, um, all those men's and women's magazines.
And
And
back
that,
at that time, those magazine jobs actually, those freelance jobs actually did pay like fairly
yes,
decently. They don't now, but they did then.
they did. Yeah. I mean, I absolutely supported myself doing
Yeah.
that for sure. Yeah. Um, And I was very crafty on the side. So I was still like doing my crafts. And when I moved to the city, I started designing handbags. So I had my little like handbag design business I was running out of my apartment. And I made wedding cakes and, I kind of did all these like big creative things on the side, but it was
Mm.
totally just my side thing for fun. And then I finally kind of merged everything and got a job as a crafts editor. So I took
Okay.
my
So what magazine was
yes.
this?
This was at Women's Day.
Okay.
Um, they had a whole specials division where they published specific subject magazines like a lot of cooking and home decorating, and then they had some crafts titles. So I joined there and I was editing their scrapbooking titles, which I was not into scrapbooking, but it had enough, crafty crossover that I got that job. And then they
Was
also
this
did,
in the 90s?
this was early 2000s.
Early 2000s. Okay.
Yeah. I think this was probably 2002 when I started working
All
there.
right. So scrapbooking boom, tons of scrapbooking
Yes.
stores. People are buying papers and all the stuff. Yeah.
All the stuff. Yeah. And then they launched a knit and crochet title. So I edited that one as well. So I was there.
That must have been very fun.
It was fun. I was the only crafter there. So I was kind of in my little bubble and no one understood anything I was doing, but it was that was my foot in the industry. So it was a
Right.
good, intro. Um, And from there, I went to work at Soho Publishing, who publishes Vogue Knitting. And I got a job as the editor in chief of a crochet magazine they were launching called Crochet Today.
Mm-hmm.
So this was in 2005, I think. So I got to launch that magazine and really help come up
Mm.
with the whole concept, and worked there running that magazine for, I think, 4 or 5 years.
Wow, that's very fun to be able to launch a brand new title like that. And were you good at crochet?
No, I did not know how to crochet.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. So lots of learning on your part, like
Yeah,
terminology and yeah,
all
the
of
whole
it.
situation. Yeah.
I never, I faked it that I knew how to crochet, but I was faking it. But I could pick it all up pretty quickly. So
Right.
I picked it up, and it's hard to find people that have crafting expertise and other specific skills like magazine editing.
Yeah.
So there wasn't always a lot of competition. I mean, there was competition for the jobs, but there weren't a lot of people who really knew the subject
Hmm.
and had the kind of editorial experience. So I was able to, kind of get in, and I knew I could get myself up to speed pretty quickly, which I did.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's exciting. Okay. So you
But I
had
did
four
know how to knit.
years. Okay. Well, that, adjacent.
Yeah.
So you had 4 years at Soho Publishing. And then what happened at the end of those 4 years?
Well, during that time, I started also hosting the TV show that was the companion to the magazine. So there was a PBS TV show called Knit and Crochet Today.
Mm.
So I was also hosting that. And
Did you feel immediately comfortable doing that? Because I feel like there's a subsection of, editors and crafters who are like really introverted and don't want to be on camera. And that's a horrifying thought. And then there's another section that's like loves to be on camera and always wanted to, be demonstrating and things like that.
Yeah. So I feel like I have a little known type of introvertism, which is that I am introverted around live people, but I'm comfortable on camera.
Okay.
And so I was comfortable doing it. And
Okay.
I think it's fun. I like being on camera. I like being on set. I didn't mind doing it at all. It was kind of like an exciting new component to add to the job. And I still like being on camera. I enjoy kind of teaching on camera and chatting.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mind. But like if I'm in a room of 10 live humans, I don't want to speak to them.
That's funny. It's definitely a very different. First of all, you have a scripted role,
Yeah.
so it's not like this open-ended question of what's going to happen. It's like you are the talent, all of these people in this room to support you, and you're all working together as a team to make it happen. And everybody's got a role to play, and everybody makes mistakes. So it's a
Yeah.
very special sort of setup.
Yeah, for sure. Yes, it is very supportive. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I was doing that. And then over those years, just made so many contacts in the industry, and really, just was fully in the industry and knew so many people from so many companies and all of it. And I was just kind of ready to move on. So I actually decided to leave. I wanted to go freelance. And I transitioned to just doing like client work basically, and taking on projects for different clients. And that was when I did a lot of the like brand spokesperson stuff. And I would do sort of appearances on TV for brands. Like I did a few, morning shows and things like that where I would be representing a brand. I did like a 24-hour, what are those sales, the selling TV stations? I'm
Oh,
blanking.
like QVC or
Yes, yes.
HSN. Okay.
Exactly. I did one of those for Singer sewing machines, but it was like a
Okay.
24-hour window where I would like rest for 3 hours and go back on for half an hour and then rest for three, and just sort of like selling their sewing machine. So I was sewing on air and talking about the machine. So I did gigs like that over those
Mm-hmm.
years, and taught a lot of video classes like during the Craftsy era.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of classes did you teach for Craftsy?
So, all sewing classes. I had a few different sewing classes on there. I did a handbag design class, which was fun because I had my handbag design business back in the day, and that came full circle where I used all of those skills and turned it around to teaching people how to sew their own. And I did, I think, like a skirt sewing class. and some others I don't even remember.
In its heyday, Craftsy was Craftsy was an amazing gig in its heyday. Like it was really, it paid well. They treated the talent really nicely. It was a really good sort of partnership to have.
It was, and definitely like probably the best paying gig I ever had in my career as a freelancer, just in terms of like actually making royalties over the years. And those continued for years. I still get royalties from them.
Yeah, that was great. It was really a certain moment, 2012, 13, 14 in there of video instruction classes, being produced. Yeah,
exactly. And I wrote some books in those years, and just designing for brands, crafting brands. I was blogging, all of that.
What was the name of your blog?
My blog was called Manhattan Craft Room.
Okay.
I stopped blogging a while ago, but I mean, I feel like this was all like right before social media took off. I feel like in retrospect, when social media hit was when all of this stuff dried up.
But
we didn't really know it at the time.
Right, exactly. Especially Instagram. I mean, Instagram really changed the game. But this was right before, on the cusp of all of those changes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And then when I stopped getting all those gigs and didn't understand why, took a few years to kind of process it all and learn that like everybody stopped getting those gigs. I feel like during those years, no one was walking around saying like, I'm not getting as much work. I feel like a failure. It's like everyone just sort of kept it to themselves. And a lot of people like went and got another job or did whatever. But I was definitely sort of getting less freelance work. So I decided to try to start a business to make some money because I needed to have money coming in. I lived in New York City at the time and I was single, supported myself in the city. So it was really no joke to make sure I had to support myself. So, I just had this idea to create an event, like a kind of splashy crafting event. So this was early 2013 was when the event launched. I started creating it in late 2012. It was called Brooklyn Craft Camp, and it was just a one-day crafting event where we had, all these different crafting classes that you could take. And there was like the photo booth and the DJ and cocktails, and we had sponsorships and all of that stuff. And it was just sort of, kind of modeled after all of these big, like, obviously not as big as like an alt summit kind of thing.
Right.
Kind of modeled after those cute, well curated, fun, social events. And it went really well. It sold out and we got great sponsors. We got like West Elm as a sponsor and MailChimp and all of these great brands. And I made money and I was like, this is amazing. Like I cracked the code. Like this is what I'm going to do now.
Right. Today's episode is brought to you by Craftsy. And here's a message from Craftsy. At Craftsy, we know making. Whether you're new to the handmade life or looking to advance your skills, we have classes for all maker levels and interests. From knitting and sewing to quilting and embroidery, cooking, baking, paper crafts, and more, Craftsy's instructors guide and encourage you, empowering you to turn ideas into realities. And they have an exclusive offer for Craft Industry Alliance podcast listeners. Right now, you can get a whole year of their premium membership for only $1.49. Visit CraftsyOffers.com to sign up, and the discount will be automatically applied at checkout. For only $1.49, you'll get a full year of access to over 2,000 premium full-length classes. Take your craft to new levels in the new year. If you're an absolute beginner, Craftsy's instructors help build strong foundations as they teach, setting you up for success and helping you fix mistakes as you go. Their enthusiasm and strong teaching style make learning accessible to all. If you're an experienced maker, make the resolution to improve your skills in the upcoming year. Craftsy's for you too. From perfecting your fondant skills to tackling complex stitches, from eye-catching garden design to next steps in sourdough, Craftsy has advanced classes in all crafts from instructors who are experts in their field. With over 2,000 classes, including downloadable patterns and recipes, Craftsy has a class and a craft for everyone. So visit CraftsyOffers.com today and get a full year of Craftsy premium membership for just $1.49. Don't miss out on 99% off the entire year. Start turning ideas into projects you can be proud of. Get this exclusive offer at CraftsyOffers.com. Thank you so much. And now back to my conversation with Brett.
But I actually decided to do was turn that into like a permanent workshop business rather than an event-based business. So I rented a space in Brooklyn that was and built like a workshop space, kind of like a, not really a maker space, more of a workshop space. It was called Brooklyn Craft Company. So we taught sewing and art classes and crafting classes and some things that were like traditional technique based, like knitting and machine sewing. And then also a lot of just kind of like whatever trend was cycling through at the time. Like we did glass etching and macrame and weaving and just, kind of whatever people were seeing on their social media, we would create workshops around it.
Mm-hmm.
So I had that business for 3 years. And then during that time, actually the first year of that business, I got pregnant with twins. And so my life changed a lot. my work life, my time for working changed a lot. So it was a challenging couple of years. And at the end, when my lease was up after 3 years, I wasn't sure if I was going to stay in business or what I was going to do. But I actually brought on 2 business partners and we moved to a store. So we kind of like doubled down and we turned it into a store that also had the workshop space. Because we found that when our customers were, after they would complete a class, they would want to buy stuff. They would they had learned this new skill and they would want to take supplies home with them. And it just really felt like a missing piece of the business model. So we opened a store, which was just right down the street from where we had been, but the original space wasn't a storefront. So the store the store is still there. I'm no longer part of it, but I'm jumping ahead in the story. But the store has sewing supplies, lots of fabric, yarn, embroidery type of things. And then also just kind of like a smattering of every kind of, modern crafting supplies.
And how is that store different? Like when you were conceiving of it, and moved from the pure workshop space to the store space, how do you feel like it was different from maybe the run of the mill craft store that we might have had, a decade prior? You know what I mean? Like it feels like it was more special in some ways. And I wonder if you can pinpoint what those ways were.
Well, we definitely aimed to be, stylish and modern and curated. So not just, and really, I can't even think of an example of like a local craft store, but I mostly think of the big box stores. And we were really trying to just be kind of way cooler than that and cuter. Like cuteness was a huge factor.
There was a lot of pink.
There was a lot of pink, yes. And everything had to be cute. And the supply, like everything that we carried was cute. And it still is. Like if you go in there, it's just like all the inventory is just, you can't stop oohing and ahhing over everything. It's just like cute, just kind of like taking all of the best stuff that you might see on Instagram or on Etsy and kind of curating it and just having all of those brands represented, tons of small brands and small businesses. And
you need a really good eye to be able to do that. In other words, you can't just go through a distributor catalog and check off 100 things. You have to actually like really work to make that happen.
Yeah, it really is the curation of kind of staying on top of the trends and seeing like who's popular on Instagram and who's making great kits and reaching out to them and, working directly with the small makers.
Right.
Yeah, that's a big part of it for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Because when you come in there as a customer, you want it to be that special experience. And I'm assuming it's not a huge space given that it's in Brooklyn. So you have to use your footprint well. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And
when you said you brought in 2 business partners, did they buy into the business or like how financially, like from a broad standpoint, like how did you like work that?
They did buy in. Yeah, it wasn't a huge dollar amount, but we sort of all chipped in to contribute to funding the new space. And we also took out a business loan.
Okay.
Yeah. And one partner decided to leave after not too long. It kind of just wasn't really working with her, other stuff going on. So then there were really 2 of us that kind of carried it forward. And I decided, so then I started bargelloing in there, but just totally organically. I was in the Strand, which is a great used bookstore in New York City. And I I love to go to their craft section and like check out their used crafts books. I
Mhm.
once found one of my greatest possessions is a autographed first edition of Martha Stewart's first ever book.
Oh my God.
Yes, and I found it there and it was like, you know, a few bucks. Like they didn't realize what they had. So there were some
Hmm.
really good finds there. And I was just browsing and I found these books on Bargello and I had never heard of it. And I was like, here I am, a professional crafter, fiber crafter, and here's a technique I had never heard of. And it just looked really like trippy and interesting. So I bought the books. I went to Pearl Soho to get materials. They carried Appleton's tapestry wool and the needlepoint canvas. And so I got some supplies and I still have the first piece I made. It's on my bulletin board there. And I just was like, started playing with it. And I was just like, this is really cool. It just was different than anything I'd ever done. Very, very fast. That was like extremely appealing to me. Um, and I just loved the color play aspect of it. And so I started just kind of sharing it like on our social media through the store. And then I started teaching a class. Actually, I had been teaching the class already at the old workshop space. And I found that people were super interested in it. Like everyone kind of had the same response I had had in the bookstore of just like, what is this thing? I've never seen it. It looks so different and like weird and cool. So it just was getting traction. So I just was kind of doing more and more of it. And then I created one Bargello kit for the store that was just sort of like under the Brooklyn Craft Company brand. And we had that one. And then I just was getting so into it that I decided to do a whole little range, like a
Hmm.
collection, and named it Hello Bargello. But it was always meant to be just like a in-store brand of just, here's a unique thing we offer. But I got so into developing that initial line. I think there were 8 kits. Just everything from like designing the instructions booklets,
Hmm.
and that kind of like spoke so much to my editorial background, and I really enjoyed that. And actually just designing the projects themselves and sourcing all the materials. And I just was so like kind of activated by that whole new creative process. And that I decided to step away from the store and just focus on building Hello Bargello. And it just felt like in all of my years in the industry, it felt like the first time I had hit on something that felt really new. It was like I had always
Mm.
done, these classic crafts like sewing and crochet and knitting.
Mm.
And it just felt like the first time that I had something like really, now I didn't invent Bargello, of course, but I feel like I dug it up out of the past. And it just felt like the first time I really had something original and new, and where I wasn't going to be competing with thousands of other people who were
Hmm.
already doing really great sewing blogs and whatever else. So it just felt like a good like a really unusual opportunity to really have like touched on something new that felt like it had potential to grow and to like be that, could potentially be built into a new trend in the craft.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what were some of the signs? I mean, obviously, you were teaching a workshop, so you could live interact with people who could try it out and give you some feedback about, their reaction to it. What were some of the signs, though, that this was indeed something that could become a trend that you instigated, versus other things like, I guess it's about finding that product market fit, but like, how did you know, I guess?
Yeah, I think it was mostly the social media response and probably the people's response who took our workshops. Like it seems like, and this is still true to this day, it seems like everyone who tries Bargello for the first time just gets like extremely obsessed with it right away. It's like very addictive and fun. And I have this like running joke where someone will like be a new customer and they'll take one of our kits and then they'll come
Hmm.
back to me or come back into my DMs the next day and they're like, I stayed up all night doing this. I can't
Right,
stop.
right.
I just
Once I
bought 6 more.
start, I have
Yeah.
to finish it. Yeah.
And then I always say, welcome to the Bargello cult. Like you're in now. There was something about it that seemed to like really capture people like that.
Mm.
Um, and seeing that our first line of kits were really well received and they sold really well also just kind of gave me an indicator that it was something that was worth exploring.
Hmm. Okay. And you don't use that needlepoint canvas though in these kits. You use, or maybe in most of them, you use plastic canvas. So it sounds like somewhere along the way, you kind of refined or shifted the materials list to be something slightly different from what you started with at Pearl Soho.
That's true. Yeah. We do use needlepoint canvas in some of our kits, but
Okay.
early on, in my first designs, actually, for the very first ones I was creating in the store, I was struggling with working with a needlepoint canvas because it's very challenging to finish, and it's really just made for pillows and for upholstering like footstools and piano benches is really what
Yes, we
needlepoint
had a
canvas is for.
Bargello footstool in my house, as well
Yes,
as two Bargello pillows that my mom made. So
exactly.
yes, back in the day. Yeah.
That's what it was originally. And also, to your question of how did I know, one of the number one things that people would say when they would take my classes early on is I would teach the class on needlepoint canvas and we would make a small piece that you could put in a frame. And the number one thing that people would say to me is like, but what else can you do with it? Like, what else can you make with this technique?
Mhm.
And it seemed like people were really hung up on like, what's going to be the usefulness in the end of this project? And of course, like embroiderers and cross stitchers make things like
Yes.
just for the sake of it being decorative. But I was getting that question so much of what else can you do with it that I got really obsessed with like, what other kind of objects can we make besides pillows or things to put in a frame? Because I just felt like a little bit of a hard sell for kind of like contemporary
Yeah.
audiences.
Yeah.
Um, and so I was struggling to make other shapes with needlepoint canvas and like not doing so well. My business partner at the time said, why don't you try plastic canvas? And I would not have thought of it. And that like blew it all out in terms of just like all the new things that suddenly I could design with it. And I think we were the first ones to really show Bargello on plastic canvas. Like it might have been out there a little bit, but by using plastic canvas, suddenly we can make all of these other shapes.
Because
And
it's rigid.
yeah, it's rigid and doesn't need to be finished on the edges. It won't
Right.
unravel. So you can just like cut out your shapes and whip stitch them together and
Mm.
create all of these like 3D, bags and wallets and sunglass cases and things like
Boxes.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Did the yarn itself change, or are you still using that same kind of yarn that you used at the start?
we use DMC tapestry wool, which is what we've been using from the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then the kit also comes with a needle, an instruction booklet, anything else?
Yeah, so our kits come with a printed instruction booklet, the yarn, the canvas, needle, any kind of special hardware. Like we have a lot of kind of like notions and hardware that might be part of the finished piece. Everything comes in a little zipper bag, like a reusable zipper bag. So everything you need to complete the project.
Okay. And
Yeah.
what was the first like bestseller kit? You know what I mean? And I wonder if it's still the same bestseller. Like most places they have that one that like everybody seems to love for whatever reason.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if I think it probably would be our Songbird pillow, which is a pillow that was part of our original design, our original line, and is still going strong. I don't know that it's necessarily our biggest seller ever, but I feel like it's kind of one of our iconic designs, and we've released it in new colorways since then, and it's still very beloved. Other things have changed. Like in the beginning, wall hangings were one of our most popular types.
Mm.
And I feel like the wall hangings trend is like slowing down a
Yeah.
little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Now I think our biggest sellers are probably our small accessories like wallets, sunglass cases, little change purses, just like fun little things to throw in your bag. People always seem to love those.
And do you feel like this is something that kids can do? Because I could see people being like, oh, I'll get it for kids. Is that appropriate? Or is this for teens, tweens, or just adults?
So kids definitely can do it. I feel like most of our projects are not necessarily appealing to kids, but we do have one kids kit that is a cute little rainbow wall hanging. Kids can absolutely do it sort of skill wise. My kids, Bargello for sure, they're 8. So, with help, of course. So I know some kids do, but we don't necessarily have a lot of kids products, but we do have something in the works for next year. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Okay. All right. So how many kits? I know before we started recording, you were saying you usually release 2 new designs a month, which is a lot to actually design and get all the
Yeah.
materials for and design the the booklet. And I mean, that's actually very ambitious, but how many designs about do you have out now? And have you retired some over the course of the period that you've been in business?
That is a great question. Um, I mean, we have well over 50 designs on our website. I
Wow.
actually haven't counted, maybe even 70. I haven't, all of 2023, we did release 2 products per month. But in previous years, I didn't necessarily achieve that pace. So it's definitely been like a ramp up to just kind of getting to that pace just by hiring help and kind of like building the business because it is a lot. And I definitely, in the earlier years when it was just me, I couldn't execute that pace. But now we have, yeah, well over 50 designs. We don't retire a lot of them. I would say we tend to reboot them. Like I have some older ones that mostly our pattern writing has improved so much or evolved over the years that some of our old patterns don't feel up to snuff to me. So a lot of times we'll kind of go back, design the pattern booklet and like roll out some new colors or possibly update the shape. I feel like I've also just kind of gotten better at just designing, I guess, and like sometimes I look back and see things that can be improved. And sometimes we retire kits, but then the pattern still exists as a digital download on our website.
Okay. So people can people buy just the digital pattern if they've already got the materials at home or they want to source their own stuff? Okay.
Yes. Yep.
All right. And recently, am I right that you've also gotten into subscription boxes?
Yes, we have a subscription box. It's called Bargello Box. It's actually been out for 2 years. It's quarterly. And that's been really great. That's been a really impactful way that I've grown the business. And it every box includes a complete project and everything you need to make it, and also like some little goodies like either notions or little gifts that are Bargello themed. Anything from scissors and keychains to all I can think of is what's in the next box, which is hasn't been announced yet. So I can't think of any examples that aren't a secret. But
And are the patterns in those new or are they new from the library? They're new, so it's all new.
It's always an original, an original exclusive design that you can only get if you're a subscriber.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And when you say that it really helped to grow the business, why do you feel like having a quarterly subscription box had that impact?
Well, I was worried in the beginning that it might cannibalize our other sales. But it did not. And we really have a pretty healthy subscriber base, and it's just been a great revenue stream. And it's really kind of magical to me that I can out on that revenue quarterly. And it's different than our other releases where each time you drop a new product, you don't really know how it's going to do. And this is just sort of guaranteed sales. And we still have to put all the work into developing it and fulfilling it. But we're kind of guaranteed to get that sales burst every quarter. And that's, just really helped to increase our revenue overall. And happily, it hasn't cannibalized anything. I think it's just helped to like bring in more customers and build our customer base. So it's just been a great product to add on to our other a la carte offerings.
And is this e-commerce site built on Shopify?
Yeah, we're on Shopify.
Okay. And so you're using a Shopify subscription plugin for the subscription box?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. All right. Cool. And you've been happy with that. Are you on Etsy at all? Were you on Etsy?
I have never been on Etsy, but we actually are just going to experiment with doing digital patterns only on Etsy, just to sort of capture anyone who might be there searching for Bargello, make sure that they find us and learn about us. And really the goal will just be to capture people who are searching on Etsy and make them find us and drive them over to our site to start buying kits.
Using Etsy as lead gen. Absolutely. Yes, and I think it's smart because they've got such a huge, it's one of the 4 largest marketplaces in the United States. So why not be there? And especially with digital where you're not fulfilling anything and try to convert those people to your own customers. To me, that's worth the Etsy fees. That's a good use of Etsy fees. So, you're still in New York City, spaces are small, rent is high. So I can't imagine you're fulfilling all of these kits and subscription boxes out of your apartment. So where,
So-
or maybe you are, but tell me where is this all headquartered?
So we actually moved 30 miles north of the city 3 years
Okay.
ago. So I'm not inside the city anymore. But when I launched Hello Bargello, I did rent a studio space in a commercial building. And so I had a very small little office there with all the inventory, and I was fulfilling all the orders out of there. I had one part-time employee, but mostly I was doing everything myself. When we moved, we had been living in apartments forever. And so the thought of having a house just felt like all the space in the world. So I decided to have my office just be in my home. So we renovated the downstairs of the house for it to be a home office. And I was there for about 2 years. And I finally admitted I didn't really like having a home-based product business because it was just a lot in and out of the house. Like I get, giant shipments of things from China, and then they're being like dropped on my driveway. And then we had to schlep them into the basement. And then I would, tackle my hundreds of Bargello boxes and carry them up and put them in the garage. And then the mailman hated me because we were a residential house. And even though we had every right to ship packages out of there, we weren't like violating any like zoning laws. They didn't want to cooperate with us, and it was just always a lot of headaches, and it just made my house feel more chaotic. And I realized I just was craving more separation, and so I decided to rent a office nearby the house. And I also was really starting to feel antsy about wanting to grow the business a lot more and just really kind of push it more. And it felt like the first time since my kids were born. And then when they were 5 was when COVID hit. And I felt like between like making it to age 5 and then immediately going into COVID, it kind of felt like the first time in 8 years that I had the bandwidth to really push and try to grow. So I just wanted kind of space to do that. So I moved to an office and hired 2 employees this year. So that's been kind of a big change from the home office. And it really has allowed us to grow a lot as well. It's just sort of having the creating the space for it allowed it to happen for sure.
Right. Sometimes that's what you need. First, the space has to come and then the growth can come.
Yeah.
And what happened kits during COVID did really well because everything's included. It's all in one space. Everybody's home. All the parties they were supposed to go to and concerts and things like that are canceled. So they're home and they want to do something that feels productive and meditative. And so craft kits really took off. I don't know if that was what you experienced.
Yes, we were very busy during COVID. When COVID hit, we still lived in Brooklyn, and my employee was not coming in anymore because of the very strict shutdown early on. And so I could walk to my studio. Thankfully, it was like 7 minutes from my apartment. And my husband, his office shut down as well, of course. And so we were just all cooped up in our little apartment. Basically, my husband and I used my studio. We would trade off of working. Like he would go there with his computer and sit and get some work done for however many hours of the day. And I'd be home with the kids, and then we would trade, and I would go and ship orders. And it was like, we were like a 20-hour-a-day shift, and that was like our space that we could each have quiet to work and I'm so thankful that we had that private space, that the shutdown didn't affect us being able to walk over there and go be in that room alone. And so I would go over there like all hours packing my orders just to get them out. It was really busy and crazy, but I also feel like it really helped me mentally to just like power through that year, because it was just like really kept me like focused and just in constant like got to get it done mode. So I'm really thankful I had that and that I wasn't just cooped up with my twin 5-year-olds.
Yeah, no, that was really good timing.
Yeah.
So what is next for Hello Bargello? I would love, maybe before we get to that question, let me ask about social media, because we talked about all the things you did prior to social media. But you are awesome on social media. And a couple of things. One thing is like all the colors are cohesive and match and are immediately recognizable as your brand. That strikes me. Another thing is your nails are always awesome. I just got a manicure and I was like, Brett's nails are always beautiful in these videos, which is important. And when you're doing fine work up close, that's crafty related, everybody looks at your nails. So, but you always have like a matching manicure. Anyway, if you can talk a little bit about the Instagram strategy, what you put into it, and you do a lot of video too. Like you said, you were comfortable on video. We often see your face. We often hear your voice.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That means a lot because we do put a lot of work into it. I think, I think a lot of it goes back to like my editorial background in a way. The colors, it's so funny how sometimes limitations create good branding because I really only have this one blue backdrop that I use for literally everything. But like now that has created a cohesive feed because everything is always on that blue backdrop. The nails, it's funny because when I had the store, there was like this really cute nail salon down the street, and my business partner and I would go for manicures, and they happened to do really good nail art there. And so we both kind of started playing. I had never gotten nail art in my life, and we started playing with it, like just for fun. Like we would, go on our lunch break and, compare nails. But I noticed that whenever I had cute nails on Instagram, we would get way better engagement. And so
interesting.
I absolutely do the nail. I only do the nails for the Instagram. Like it's 1000% a business move that I have my nails done all the time. And sometimes I feel silly because like I'm not like I don't dress, super fancy or creative. Typically, like I love to just wear like jeans and a black top is my favorite. Like I'm not like I don't know, I'm not just all dressed up, but I always have these wild nails. And I feel like people must think like, what's up with this crazy lady who has these wacky nails all the time?
Which you have right now. Like I can see them while you're talking.
Yeah. Yeah, like I sometimes feel like they don't match the rest of me, but it is absolutely a business move and it works 1000%. Like it has not, the power of the nails has not worn off. Like they are so good for engagement online. And they do tend to always match my stuff. And that's kind of accidental. I don't even necessarily do it on purpose, but it's clearly just like whatever colors are in my brain come out in whatever designs I'm working on. And then they come out in the nails. So aside from that, my social media strategy, like I try to follow and emulate other accounts. I follow like some big accounts that aren't crafting accounts, but I just kind of try to pay attention to what other people are doing. And I think showing up with your face is important and just, having that personal connection. I feel like we have a really good customer base, like very positive, kind customers. We get very few cranky customer problems. And I feel like people really know me. Like a lot of times when they email in for customer service, they'll say, "Hi, Brett," and, like really act like they're talking to me. And I feel like that, causes them to just be a lot kinder. And they know that there's real people here. Even if they have a problem, they initiate it in a kind way. And I feel like it really does help to like create like a human culture where people know that we are humans here. We're just a tiny business. And I think it helps for business growth.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, here we go. You can expense your manicures. This is a good thing to know, people.
I absolutely do. And my accountant fully approves.
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. That's a business expense for sure. All right. So back to my question earlier, which is what's next for Hello Bargello? Do you have plans, growth plans, or just keep steady, or any exciting things we should know about on the horizon? And it sounds like there's a kids something coming.
There is a kids something coming. So what's next is I am really pushing to grow the business. Like I really, it's really my goal to treat it like any other business that's not a craft business. Sometimes I feel like craft businesses have a tendency to treat themselves too small.
Yeah.
And that I also have been guilty of that in the past. And I'm really in an era of trying to make sure I'm not doing that and really pushing just to build a successful contemporary business, e-commerce business. And so I really work to like learn about e-commerce, and I've hired a digital marketing consultant who has been like extremely helpful. And I'm so glad I invested in that. And it's really my goal to just grow the business a lot next year and in volume overall. We actually doubled this year, which was really exciting.
Wow.
And I don't know if we'll double again next year, but I do have another really robust kids product that's launching next year that I haven't talked about yet, but it's a very big endeavor that will definitely just be a lot more volume for us to
Mm.
manage. So that's going to be our big goal for this coming year.
And you're only direct to consumer, or are you going to do wholesale or no?
We're only direct to consumer, and I tried wholesale once very early on, and it didn't go great. I found that um, it's hard to make the margins work. It's just like such a drastic difference that, and since so much of our kits are, um, we are purchasing the components that go into the kits, it's hard to get the prices low enough to offer wholesale pricing and still have it be profitable enough for it to be worth it for us. And I also found that things didn't necessarily sell so great wholesale. We weren't getting a lot of reorders. And my theory for that is that the customers need that kind of education component that comes from discovering us online and seeing our videos and kind of seeing how like visually exciting it is and how quick and satisfying it can be. And that if you're just like seeing the kit on a shelf without kind of entering through that portal, that I think that something's being lost in translation. So since they didn't do that well and we didn't make money off of them in the first place, I kind of discontinued wholesale. But I definitely think about trying to bring it back in a different way that it could work better now that we know a lot now that we didn't know then. But so yeah, that's been a tricky thing.
Do you have a Facebook group or a community aspect of this?
We have a Facebook group for our subscription box.
Okay.
But we do not have just a general Bargello group. We probably should. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I think it would do well. I was just thinking about the Woobles, which is not super different, but like crochet kits. And they have a Facebook group and they've got raving fans in there. But I feel like, people need that, as you said, contact point and support and community feeling. Connection with the owner, I don't know, just all of it, right? And it kind of all can be furthered, right? When they're in community together and then feeling like, oh, I want to buy that one and do that one too. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's a good idea. I actually I've struggled with like figuring out how to create more community because I feel like it's kind of tricky right now with the current platforms. Like, because not everyone is a Facebook person and Instagram's not good for that. And it is kind of hard.
There's not an ideal solution, but I'm always looking to find one. So maybe something new will pop up. You never know. So, all right. I want to make sure we get to your recommendations because you've got some good ones. So you signed up for a stained glass course. And I think this is so smart because I just signed up for a basket weaving course because I feel like you got to try new stuff.
Totally. Yes. I'm excited about this because I have been thinking about doing stained glass. My grandma did stained glass back in the day, and I think about it sometimes and it's like coming back as a trend now, and I see it on Instagram and I'm dying to try it. So, rather than just like buy all the stuff and have it in my basement, I decided to try a class. And I also love it helps me a lot to have that time carved out because otherwise I just never get around to it. So, my class starts right after the holidays. So I'm excited during the winter doldrums to go.
Right.
Exactly.
That the structure of doing it in a class is very smart. So that's great. And then one of your favorite podcasts for people into true crime is called Bear Brook. I have not listened to this.
Do you like true crime?
A little. I've listened to the few that I've enjoyed. I can't say it's my favorite genre.
Yes, totally get it. Yeah, I feel like it either is or it isn't. But this one, I just love it. I feel like anyone who, if you have to go on a long drive or if you're working on a long project, I always recommend this one to people who are looking for something new. It's just this fascinating. It's kind of like it's like a series and then it's over. It's not just ongoing.
Right.
And it just tells the story of these bodies that were discovered, and decades later they solved these murders that had just been such an utter mystery, and they were solved through familial DNA and also citizen sleuthing, the people who take the DNA results and weed through literally 50,000 possible results and kind of do the detective work, and they solved this mystery.
Wow.
And it's more of a sciencey. It's fascinating from a sciencey standpoint. It's not like a gruesome true crime story. It's more of just sort of the process. Yeah. Love it.
Then I might like it more.
Yeah.
That sounds good. Okay. And then you've been exploring crafts with your daughters who are both 8 now. So you've been doing all kinds of different things like soap making, candle making, resin molding, 3D printing, and all sorts of things like that, which is great. Like I love being a crafty mom, and my kids have fond memories of like doing, I mean, felting, paper mache. We did like everything. And my son said to me the other day, he's like, we just did those things because that's what you wanted to do.
Like, yeah, of course.
I was going to keep you guys busy. And I'm like, how about we make a paper mache project now?
Absolutely. I think this is the only reason I had kids was so that we could do crafts.
Right.
But they finally like just gotten big enough to where they really can do stuff and it's not just chaos. And so we're really like getting into some new things I had never done with the candle making and resin pouring. So that's just been kind of one adventure after another. And we actually, what was my office at home, we're turning into just like epic craft room. So
good idea.
Yes. I'm so excited about it.
Yeah. No, it's great.
Area.
Yeah, you can do bath bombs. We love bath bombs. I never made those before, but like, yeah, it's fun. I mean, honestly, I love it. Yeah. Plus, like in the kitchen too, we made cheese. We
haven't done that.
Yeah, it's fun. Anyway, I agree with you. That is one of the reasons to have kids. So.
Well, anyway. I feel like before this, it was just like everything made a giant mess and I would just get stressed out.
Well, that still happens and it's still stressful. But you're like, oh my God, there's paint on that. Like, oh, stop.
Yeah,
but yeah. It's okay. You just have to let it go at a certain point. Anyway, well, Brett, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Craft Industry Alliance podcast. It was great talking to you.
Thank you so much. This is really fun.
And you've been listening to the Craft Industry Alliance podcast. I'm Abby Glassenberg. Today's episode was brought to you by Craftsy, calling all crafters. Are you ready to dive deep into your favorite crafting projects and learn new techniques along the way? Then it's time to join Craftsy Premium Membership. For only $1.49, you'll receive a full year of access to expert-led tutorials, patterns, and projects in every category you can imagine. With a massive library of resources at your fingertips, you'll be able to create your best work yet and bring your crafting dreams to life. Don't wait. Sign up at craftseyoffers.com and discover the endless possibilities of Craftsy Premium Membership. Thank you so much, Craftsy. Craft Industry Alliance is a community for craft professionals. When you become a member of Craft Industry Alliance, you get in-depth coverage of craft industry news, the opportunity to connect with fellow professionals for advice and support, and access to an educational library filled with ideas, tools, and resources to help you as you build your business. Join us at craftindustrｙalliance.org. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.